Hi, welcome to all. In this video, we are going to discuss on the challenges of cloud computing. We have seen about cloud computing, its concepts and the benefits. And this video gives you a clear picture on the challenges that exist in cloud computing. So there are common cloud computing adoption challenges. Number one is increased security vulnerabilities. Number two, reduce operational governance control. Number three, limited portability between cloud providers. And number four is multi-regional compliance and legal issues. So all these are the four challenges of cloud computing, and we'll see in the next slides. We will see about each and every challenges in detail. So when moving on to the first challenge called increased security vulnerabilities, that is the remote usage of IT resource, it requires an expansion of trust boundaries by the cloud consumers to include an external cloud. That is, whenever we use a cloud, there is an trust boundaries that occur around the cloud environment. So, whenever we need to increase the security aspect, both a cloud consumer and a cloud provider support the same, and compatibility security technologies could exist, which is difficult to establish a security architecture that spans the trust boundaries without introducing vulnerability. Therefore, whenever we go for a cloud-based IT resource, it can share and therefore can overlap trust boundaries from different cloud consumers. That is an example. We'll see an example shortly, where two organizations they access the same cloud services, and based on, since both the organizations use the same cloud services, there is a requirement of expanding the trust boundaries of the cloud, therefore resulting in overlapping trust boundaries. So it can be difficult for a cloud provider to offer the security technologies that accommodate the security requirements of both the cloud services. That is, if you just look at organization X and organization Y, the trust boundaries of organization X and trust boundaries of organization Y are expanded, and when both the organizations are trying to leverage on the cloud services, there is an overlapping of trust boundaries. So, whenever there is an overlapping of trust boundaries of a cloud environment, then there is a big challenge or a big question mark of how the securities are to be handled. So this is the greatest challenge and an important challenge that any whenever you establish a cloud computing environment in an organizations, it has to be overcome. The next challenges is the reduced operational governance and control. That is, when forming dependencies on externally cloud hosted IT resources, cloud consumers are almost always given a lower level of governance control when compared to the on-premise IT resources. That is, the reduced level of control can introduce the risk pertaining to how a cloud is being operated by the cloud provider. So, a consumers are often required to rely on a service level agreement. That is, there is a term called a service SLAs, in the sense, in order to have a governance control, there are some service level agreements. So, based on this SLAs and other warranties, the cloud provider usually provides the services to the consumers. So, when you look at the this particular challenge, it can relate to the organizations providing cloud or to the external connections required to communicate with the cloud. So, when you go with this kind of SLAs, legal contracts combined with SLAs, technology inspections and monitoring can mitigate these risks. So, you have a lot of controls, policies, inspections, contracts, etc., such that you monitor the cloud services, and whenever there is any kind of malfunctioning of any particular service, that it can mitigate these kind of risk. So, however with public clouds, there is always a risk that the cloud provider will be acquired or may go out of business, potentially resulting in an inability to fulfill legal obligations. So, this combined with limited portability challenges can have significantly restrictive impacts on the cloud consumers. See, if this is been explained with unreliable cloud providers. When you have cloud service consumers, when they are accessing the cloud providers, and if the cloud providers have a different versions, or if they support different standards, then the cloud provider cannot leverage its support to the cloud service consumer. So there is an unreliable cloud provider setup here. So this all will mitigate the risk. So when you talk in terms of this reduced operational governance, the cloud service consumer is no longer able to access the cloud service on the virtual server using this standards compliant messages. So this unreliable network, the diagram that is shown here focuses on an unreliable network. This particular diagram explains that despite the cloud consumer and the cloud provider each having the reliable network, the network connections between their respective environments can still complicate the communications. That is, both the cloud service consumer of an organization A and a cloud service of cloud A, they have their own reliable networks, but when they are trying to have an communication, there still could be an unreliable communication can do exist. So this is another interesting challenges when we talk about the communication that exists between the reliable networks. That is, each and every network will have a different bandwidth, and that may not suit a common connection between those two networks. Then there is a big risk involved in that. So this is another interesting challenges of cloud computing. The second challenge is limited portability between the cloud providers. So due to the lack of established industry standards within the cloud computing industry, individual public clouds are proprietary to various extents. So, for a cloud consumer that have custom built solutions with dependencies, it can be challenging to move from one cloud environment, one cloud provider to that of the another. So this is an example: a cloud service, a cloud consumer may be unable to migrate to an application from cloud A to cloud B because cloud provider of cloud B does not support the same security technologies as cloud A. So this cloud A, suppose any application you want to migrate from cloud A to cloud B, and if cloud B doesn't support, then there is a big question mark of the security technologies that exist among them. So this is the another challenges, and the last challenge is multi-regional compliance and legal issues. That is, a cloud consumer will often not have information regarding the physical location of the IT resources provided by the third-party cloud providers. That is, depending on the nature of the cloud consumer's business, there may be industry or government regulations and policies that impose specific legal requirements. For example, when we take an example of a payment card industry data security standards, it requires that the card holder data be stored in a separate network segments. That is, the cloud computing, the cloud consumers, they are not aware of any kind of physical location of the IT resources. So it's a big chaos at that particular time. So the cloud consumers are unaware of that location hosted by the cloud providers, and so they may not be able to comply with such regulations and policies. That is, it's often an interesting challenges that has been faced by many of the cloud consumers. And another legal issues are regional legal issues that can pose problems with the disclosure of cloud hosted data. So a cloud consumer may be unaware that a cloud provider is physically locating the cloud consumer storage device in a country where the risk of data being disclosed is higher than in other countries. That is, if the cloud consumer is data is stored in US with a different standard and similar, and that could be easily accessed than the data stored in EU countries due to the enactment of USA. That is, data have been stored in different countries, and each cloud consumers can access it easily or difficulty based on the policies or regulations in which the data is being stored. So, reputable cloud providers can generally provide guarantees of these technology. So I think the challenges are discussed. Thank you.